content is first we're going to look at the review of what we learned the last time, and then what is a martyr, examples in the Bible, and then establishing boundaries. All right, so review. When we first met for the first part, we learned that, well, actually, I didn't teach this part, so I forgot to add it in. But there's a psychologist called Abraham Maslow, and he made this pyramid of like our basic necessities as human beings, and the first two are the ones that we need the most, and it's kind of like a ladder. Like the higher you go, like the more like you've become yourself. And so the first one says psychological needs, physiological needs, food, water, warmth, and rest. And then the green one says safety needs, which includes security and safety. And so it's important because security has to do with like how we feel when we are people pleasing, because people pleasing roots from insecurity. So if you don't meet that basic need, then that's where it starts. Like that's where you start feeling insecure and wanting to find favor in other people. And then people pleasing displays idolatry because you are seeing them higher than God because you want to please them over what pleases God. And people pleasing can also turn into manipulation because the pleaser is speaking or behaving in a certain way in order to get a desired result. And then next. So what is a martyr? So there's two different definitions for a martyr. And the first one says a person who sacrifices something of great value, and especially life itself, for the sake of principle. The second definition says a person who pretends to suffer or who exaggerates suffering in order to get praise or sympathy. So we're going to see more of the second definition today, and we'll see that second definition in Luke. Yeah, so in Luke chapter 10, verses 38 through 42, it says, Jesus and his disciples went on their way. Jesus came to a village where a woman named Martha lived. She welcomed him into her home. She had a sister named Mary. Mary sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said. But Martha was busy with all the things that had to be done. She came to Jesus and said, Lord, my sister has left me to do the work by myself. Don't you care? Tell her to help me. Martha, Martha, the Lord said, you are worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed. Really, only one thing is needed. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her. So in these verses, we saw that Jesus comes to visit Martha, and she has prepared, her and Mary have prepared like this meal for Jesus. And once Jesus comes in, Mary sits down at his feet and listens to Jesus talk while Martha is busy getting stuff ready. And so we have Martha versus Mary, and Martha was distracted from serving and lost focus, while Mary, her focus was on Jesus. So there's nothing wrong like doing all the things for Jesus, but once you lose focus and you're not doing it like with the right intention, or not focusing on Jesus anymore, then that's where there's an issue. So this story of Martha shows like the second attitude, the martyr attitude, second definition that I showed, because she's like exaggerating her suffering, or like putting the attention on her so she can receive favor from Jesus. And then the second one, another comparison is Martha versus Paul. So Martha again was distracted with serving and lost focus, And Paul, if we read the books that he read, we read, I think especially in 2 Corinthians, we read about his suffering that he went through. And when he talks about it, he focuses on Jesus rather than his suffering. So he's the opposite of Martha. He focuses on Jesus rather than his suffering. And then next one. So establishing boundaries. It says, first, boundaries, it means personal boundaries are what define your identity. They're like the property lines around a home. This is my property and that is not my property. This is me, what I value, what I'm good at, believe, need, feel, or that is not me. So your boundaries are like what makes up who you are, and what you let in inside of your boundaries. Like a house that has a fence around it. Once a person has crossed that fence to where the house is, then they've crossed that boundary. And that's the same with ours. We all have our own boundaries and what makes up who we are. And then 2, so dangers of not having boundaries. 1, there's expectation. So first, you expect people to like you, so you put yourself in dangerous situations. So as a people pleaser, if you don't have boundaries, then you don't know what's harmful to you, because you're trying to receive favor from people that you don't realize you're putting yourself in situations. And then others have expectations from you because you always say yes. So because people know that you say yes, they will take advantage and have expectations of you because you always say yes. It says, these people have said yes so many times that their schedules are loaded and their minds and bodies are weary. The consequences of saying yes over and over when we should say no is a life bondage to whims and expectations of others. And yeah. So next one. So dangers of not having boundaries. In Proverbs 29:25, it says, if you are afraid of people, it will trap you, but if you trust in the Lord, he will keep you safe. So last time we were here, I talked about Aaron and King Saul, how they were afraid of the people, and they were swayed by that, like because they were afraid of people. They were doing things that didn't align with God, and they were disobeying God. And that fear of people is going to keep you trapped, and you're going to keep wanting to please people. But if you trust in God, and he's the one that you're pleasing, then he'll keep you safe, and you will never feel that feeling that you felt of fear with people. And then another danger of not having boundaries is an unhealthy lifestyle. So I have a picture of a buffet right there, and I'll read this example that I saw. So it says, picture a person walking down a long buffet. At some point, their plate is full. They can't fit on one more scoop of food or balance one more roll on the pile they've loaded on their plate. If they slide on one more food item, something will fall off the other side of the plate. That's exactly what it's like when a person has said yes to so many things that their life is jam-packed. They have no more time or energy to give. Their plate is full. But if they have a hard time saying no, they still try to load one more thing. When they say yes to anything new, when they creatively seek to slide it onto the plate of their life, something falls off the other side of the plate. When our life is full, another yes is actually a no. Sadly, the thing that falls off the plate is often more important than the new thing they try to add. What often falls off is family, health, or time with Jesus. When your schedule and life are full, every yes is a no. So the example is the buffet. I'm pretty sure most of us have been to a buffet, and at some point your plate is too full, so you stop putting stuff on your plate. But for people pleasers, that's not the case. They keep putting stuff on their plate even though things are falling off. And like how they mentioned here, things that fall off is usually the most important things, like our health, our family, time with Jesus. So they start to feel the effects, or those things start to feel the effects when we start putting too much on our plate and not establishing those boundaries. And then people who can't seem to say no are magnets for unhealthy people who are masters at manipulating and using others. So again, if you're not establishing those boundaries and saying no to things that are harmful to you, then it's unhealthy for you, because you're doing things that are harming you while you're not noticing, and it keeps going, getting bigger and bigger, or getting worse. And then third one. So then value who you are. So boundaries protect us from those who have no self-control and who wish to control us. So again, if we easily say yes to things, then we're easily manipulated by other people who take advantage of us. Those boundaries are there to protect us and stuff. Okay. So proper boundaries aid believers in keeping out worldly influences. So again, if a people pleaser is seeking for favor desperately, then they won't really be obeying God or like staying within His word, because they want to seek favor in other people who might not be from church, or doing things that don't align with God. And every time you say no to something, you open your schedule and reclaim some of your energy. This frees you to say yes to what matters most. So every time you say no, you gain back time, or like it says here, energy, to do things that do matter, like spend time with Jesus, spend time with your family, take care of your health, rather than doing things that are no benefit to you. And then to know yourself and be secure that you are loved is essential to all relationship and activities. So learning to love yourself and knowing that your value doesn't come from what other people think of you, but rather than what God has made you to be, plays a huge role in this people-pleasing attitude. Because once you learn that, then you won't want to find pleasure or favor in from anybody else. And in Psalms 139:14, it says that we're fearfully and wonderfully made. God has made us unique and special, different from everybody. If you don't like the way you look, it's because you're different, and God has made you that way. We have to learn to like love ourselves, no matter how we think we look. Okay. So it says, the better your boundaries of self-awareness and self-definition are, the greater your capacity to offer empathy and love to others. Good boundaries help you to care for others because you have a stable foundation to operate from and are not distracted or depleted by personal insecurities or blind spots. So again, if you have boundaries, you'll have more time and energy for the more important things. So like helping others or taking care of others and being genuine about it, while before you weren't, because you were just doing anything to receive favor and probably wasn't even doing it with the right intentions. And then it's not. Yeah, thank you. So then one example in the Bible of somebody who established boundaries is Daniel. So in Daniel 1, verses 8 through 9, it says, "But Daniel resolved not to defile himself with the royal food and wine. And he asked the chief official for permission not to defile himself this way. Now God had caused the official to show favor and compassion to Daniel." So here is a story we know very well. It's when Daniel is presented with the food of the king, and that food is presented to their gods. And so Daniel didn't want to eat that food that was given to other gods that's not our God or his God. And so he said no, because he knew like himself, and he had boundaries that he had set for himself. And then another example is Jesus. So in Mark 1, verses 35 through 39, it says, "Very early in the morning, while it was dark, Jesus got up, left the house, and went off to a solitary place, where he prayed. Simon and his companions went to look for him, and when they found him, they exclaimed, 'Everyone is looking for you.' Jesus replied, 'Let us go somewhere else to the nearby villages so I can preach there also. That is why I have come.' So he traveled throughout Galilee, preached in their synagogues, and driving out demons." Okay. So here we see that Jesus was first at praying by himself, and Simon and the rest come and tell him that everybody is looking for him, and Jesus tells them, "Let's go somewhere else, so he can go preach somewhere else." So Jesus was saying no, like he was establishing a boundary of getting done his mission that he was told to do. So because he knew what his mission was and what had to be done, he didn't spend all his time in one place, because if he did, then he would have been there for too long. And so because he said no, he was able to accomplish what God had given him. And then Luke 5:15 through 16, it says, "But despite Jesus' instructions, the report of his power spread even faster, and vast crowds came to hear him preach, to be healed of their diseases. But Jesus often withdrew to the wilderness for prayer." So again, we see here Jesus establishing boundaries and saying no to things that wasn't part of his mission or plan. And he set his priorities, and he went off to prayer to spend time with God. So the same way, we have to know our priorities, and know when is the right time for each thing. I lost my train of thought. Okay, so it says our goal is to reflect Jesus and become more like him. So sometimes it's hard to say no to things, because it's it might be something fun, like going to I don't know, a birthday party or an escape room or something, and you want to go to it, but you probably have homework or something else, and it's gonna take up your time. So it's knowing your priorities and knowing when to say no. And also it can be stuff like I forgot the example I was trying to use. But primarily his personal soul care had to do with separating himself from people to be alone with God, who he called Abba, which means Papa. So it's kind of like a term of endearment. And recently I was hearing a preaching from Rick Warren, and he was talking about prayer and how when we pray we have to get intimate with God and use Father, or more like Abba, or because it shows intimacy, that relationship with God, and it's what he wanted us to use. He wanted us to use, because when he gave the instructions of praying, he used Father. And so the same way Jesus used Abba, we can use in our personal lives as well whenever we speak to him. Okay, and then the next one. So then establishing boundaries, the first step is set priorities. So Proverbs 21:17 says, "Those who love pleasure become poor. Those who love wine and luxury will never be rich." So for this verse, it's just talking about those people who seek pleasure and become and lose self-control when they look at things like wine and luxury, or in our case, it could be anything. Once we lose our self-control and we start setting our priorities on other things, that's when it becomes an issue. And then Luke 3:23 says, "Work at everything you do with all your heart. Work as if you were working for the Lord and not for human masters." So everything that we do has to be done with like 110%, because we're not doing it just for anybody. Anything that we do, it's always, we're representing God, and it has to be done with like excellence and with the most effort. So if you are going to do something, make sure you can give that 100%, 110%, and not just give like 8%. Because I don't know if you guys have seen like a post where it says like on Mondays 8%, and then Tuesdays like 15%, and then Wednesday, I think that's where I left out. Yeah, Wednesday like 30%, and then Thursday like another percent. To make 100 like in a week, but it should really be like 110% each day. And then Proverbs 25:28 says, "A person without self-control is like a city whose walls are broken through." So again, like in Proverbs 21:17, it's talking about those people who don't have self-control, and one of the fruit of the spirits is like self-control. So we have to learn like to have self-control within us, and know when something is like too much for us. Know when our plate is too full and we can't take anymore. And then, so give as much as you have the capacity to give. So if you know that taking on another project is probably gonna affect like your relationship with God, like the time you spend with Him, and you can't really give like that 110%, then it's best to say no, or pray about it, as we'll see in number 2. So number 2 says, seek God's perspective through prayer and studying the Word. And it says Proverbs 3:5-6 says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not depend on your own understanding. Seek His will in all you do, and He will show you which path to take." So, and anything that you want to do, like always seek God's like advice. Like you can think like about a job, probably an internship, a volunteer opportunity, like anything. You can always pray to God, and He can give you that guidance and understanding or wisdom for you to know if it's okay for you to take that, because only He knows how that's gonna affect your like future, like your time with all those responsibilities that you have. And then 3, don't answer right away. Seek God's advice. So, let's say for something like somebody approaches you to do like a dance or a skit or an especial for the church. You can always say like, "Oh, can you give me time to think about it?" and then pray about it. So you know if it's something that you can give that 110% to. That way, you just don't say yes right away, and then when the thing comes around, you can't give it your effort because you have too much on your plate. And it says, the way to know which boundaries are godly is to examine the motive. Are you protecting yourself or someone weaker from potential harm, either emotional or physical? If so, that is healthy and needful boundaries. But if those boundaries are maintaining distance from someone, or like you're maintaining a boundary from someone because you dislike them, then that's not a good boundary. So yeah, and that is it for this chapter. And yeah, so then Happy New Year to all of you. Yeah. And then Palana, if you can help me with the petitions.